Bookstagrammers, welcome back to the Bibliovert channel. My name is Jacqueline, and today I thought I would do a little bit of a January 2021 wrap-up, as well as show you some of the books that I got this month. My birthday was at the beginning of January, so I decided to go to the bookstore, buy a few new books. So let's just go ahead and jump right on into it, and I will start with the books that I did read this month. So it actually ended up being a pretty decent month, I would say. I ended up reading a couple on my Kindle, and then I am currently in the middle of two. The month technically isn't over, but because we are recording for the Bibliovertpodcast tomorrow, and then it's the weekend, so it's just a little bit easier to film now. I am in the middle of one for the Bibliovertpodcast, so I really have to get that done, and then I am book buddy reading with some friends. So I'm hoping to add two to the end of the list for this month as well, and if not, I'll just finish them in February. So I'm gonna start with the books that I read in chronological order. So the first book that I read this month was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. For those of you who don't know, we are doing the entire Throne of Glass series over on the Bibliovert podcast. We release episodes every 2 weeks. So this was my first read of the year, and these are the FaeCrate exclusive Throne of Glass edition dust jackets, and I really like them. I like the way they look on my shelves. I think they're beautiful. This spine's really pretty, and then they have artwork for each of the books, different characters. I actually got mine off of eBay because I am not a FaeCrate subscriber, but this wasn't my first time reading Throne of Glass. However, I absolutely love the series so much. So this is about an assassin named Selena who had been enslaved and was working in the mines in a place called Bibliovert, and she is pulled out of that to then join a competition to become the king's right hand and essentially the king's assassin. So this entire book follows that journey that she goes on and all the different competitions that she has to go through. It is so incredibly good, and it's a great way to set up the rest of the series, so highly recommend it. I also know it's super popular, but it's just fabulous. So if you would like to hear more of our thoughts on Throne of Glass, please feel free to go check out our episode. We go in a lot of depth talking about the different characters, what we love and what we don't love, so feel free to go check that out. The second and third book that I read this month were both actually novellas that I read on my Kindle. So the first one was Memento by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and this is the prequel to the Illuminae series. I read that earlier in 2020 and absolutely loved it. I had never read anything like it before. The way that it is set up is so unique. Everything is through files or emails or like different data pages. It was just such a cool experience. I really enjoyed it. So this prequel is kind of more from Aiden, the AI, the evil AI's point of view. Fantastic. It was like 70 pages. And I just loved it. I think my jaw was on the floor for the entirety of it. It was a really quick read. However, I just absolutely ate it up and had such a great time reading it. And I think it sets up the story really well. And then it just gives you like a nice little peek back into that world. So I gave Memento a 5-star just because kind of the nostalgia, just enjoyed being back in it and just absolutely ate it up. It was so good. The other novella that I read is Becoming the Dark Prince by Carrie Maniscalco, and this is from the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, and this was actually from Thomas Cresswell's point of view. So I did not love the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. I felt like some parts of it were a little bit predictable. I couldn't really quite figure out if it was kind of like a younger YA audience, but then other times it seemed to be a little bit higher YA. So I just got a little bit confused as to who the audience was supposed to be at different times. And I really didn't love Audrey Rose. However, I did read them all. I didn't hate them, but they just weren't my favorite series that I ended up reading in 2020. But of course, I still read the novella because I did actually really enjoy Thomas Cresswell. So reading it from his point of view was actually pretty fun. It kind of starts at the end of book 3 and then kind of toes the line of a little bit of book 4. However, it was just really sweet and I enjoyed kind of getting to be in his brain. So I gave this one a 4-star. I also read The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Audier, and I actually did a reading vlog of it, so I talk a lot more about my thoughts on it. However, I absolutely loved it, loved the characters. I love the Middle Eastern setting. It was just a lot of fun. I did give it 4 stars. There were a few things that were just a little bit confusing for me, but I really enjoyed it and I really like Renee Audier. I've read some of her other works, The Beautiful and the Damned, and I am interested in reading more of her books. The next book that I read was one that was recommended from TikTok. And the way that it was pitched was if you like Sarah J. Maas and Jennifer L. Armentrout, and you have kind of become obsessed with Bridgerton, which I fall into all three of those categories, that this was the book for me, and it is Firelight by Kristen Callahan. And I asked two of our patrons, Liz and Chelsea, to read this with me as like a fun little buddy read because they also love those authors and Bridgerton. I have never, ever read something like this before. It wasn't bad. There's just one scene in here that kind of dug its claws into my brain so strongly that anytime I thought, oh wait, I'm kind of enjoying this, that scene would come back up and I would just be like, I cannot believe I read that and that this was in literature. But it was a fun setting. I did enjoy some of the characters. It is about a girl who has a power and she is forced into marriage with this mysterious and sinister man, and it's kind of set in Victorian England, and he kind of has a weird past and she's trying to figure out what it is, and then it has some fantasy elements to it. I wouldn't necessarily say if you are a fan of Sarah J. Maas and Jennifer L. Armentrout that it is kind of in that same league. However, I think if I had known going into it that it just kind of has little droppings of that throughout, that I would probably have rated it higher, but I think my expectations were a little bit too high. So I ended up giving this 2 stars out of 5. Then I read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, which is book 2 of the Throne of Glass series, and this is my least favorite out of the entire series. However, I still really enjoyed reading it. We did an episode on this. Allie's rants about a couple of characters are absolutely fantastic. So definitely go check that out because it's amazing. But I do appreciate this book because it does set up a lot of the rest of the series. We get to see more of Selena and Dorian and Chaol. And so I ended up giving this one 4 stars out of 5. So the next book that I read was actually our Patreon book buddy read, and it was Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen, and I had really high hopes because I have read Danielle L. Jensen's British Kingdom series and have talked about it over and over and over and over and over again about how much I loved it. However, I did not particularly enjoy this book. I gave it 2 stars. It is about a girl who is kidnapped and taken under a mountain where she is forced to marry a troll, and essentially she then is attempting to help the trolls escape this curse that they have. So an interesting concept. I have never read anything else about trolls before, so that was definitely interesting. However, I just didn't really enjoy it very much. So I gave it, in my notes, I gave it 2 stars, but in my heart, I gave it 1. So, moving on to the next one, I read The Rose and the Dagger by Renee Audier, which is the second to The Wrath and the Dawn, and I enjoyed this. I didn't like it as much as I enjoyed The Wrath and the Dawn. I think it was a little bit slower, and I didn't really love the ending. However, the story and the plot were really good, and so I was willing to kind of like push through and continue reading it. I still love Shazi and Khalid and just really enjoyed their relationship, so I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So also over on our Patreon, one of the things that we started actually in the month of January was reading the favorite books of our patrons, and so I picked one series not really knowing that this was actually the favorite series of multiple of our patrons. So I read The Raven Boys and also The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiffwater, and I did a buddy read of this with Jenna at Live a Thousand Lives, and Grace at Evie Grace Reads, and then another Grace at For the Love of Lit. And y'all, I loved it. I understand why they love this series so much. It's so great. I usually don't read contemporary novels very much, but this kind of was able to straddle both contemporary and fantasy in such a way that I really enjoyed. I also kind of consider myself more of a plot-driven person. I like to kind of be kept on the edge of my seat and kind of on my tiptoes, but the relationships in this book were just so good, and the plot was wonderful, and I really enjoyed it, and it did keep me on my toes, but I don't think it was as much of a focal point as the relationships that were just so incredible. So Blue has been told her entire life that she's going to end up killing the boy that she loves, and Gansey is desperate to find this old dead Welsh king, and has been going on this long, like years-long search for him. And then you have Adam and Ronan and Noah, just these incredible characters who love each other but are struggling through different things on their own, and the way that they come together and their friendships, and it is just so good, and I just absolutely loved it. So I gave it a 5-star. It was just absolutely incredible, sweet, and it just like speaks to your heart. And Maggie Stiefvater's writing is amazing. It's just beautiful. So I also read The Dream Thieves, which is book 2. I also have the 2 other books in the series, and I'm hoping to also read those in February because I am hooked and I just love it. But this is book 2, and this focuses a little bit more on Ronan, which was a character that you didn't get to see a whole lot of in Raven Boys. And just like, wow. It was really, really good. I would say that this was kind of the reverse of the first one, where it was a little bit more plot driven, but the relationships were still really, really sweet. But the plot definitely advanced a lot faster in this book than it did in the first. But it was amazing, and I cannot wait to dive into book 3. I would say that I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as I enjoyed the first, and so I did end up giving it a 4-star, but I loved it. Maybe 4.5. Like, I loved it. It was just so good. I think 4.5. Yeah, 4.5. The 2 books that I am currently in the middle of reading that I am hoping to get done before the end of January, / one of them I have to get done before the end of January. The one that I have to get done is Heir of Fire. Again, for the Bibliovertpodcast, we're recording our episode tomorrow. But yeah, your girl's got work to do, but this is the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series. Again, I love it. It's so good. We get to meet so many new characters, and I love it. I really think that this is where the plot kind of like picks up and really starts to develop in this series. So if you did not enjoy the first 2, I highly recommend pushing through. I think Sarah J. Maas is definitely kind of like a second half writer, and this is definitely where the plot picks up and gets really, really good. So that's where I'm at. And then the other one is also a reread. I am reading this again with 2 of our patrons, Liz and Chelsea. I am rereading From Blood and Ash and actually trying to annotate this time. I would not say I'm a very good annotator, but I absolutely love this book. We originally read it again for the podcast, and I just like absolutely ate it up then, and I'm surprisingly enjoying it even more on this second read. I think the first time I read it, I gave it 3 stars, and where I'm at right now, which again is not very far, I'm like 100 pages into it, it's like straight up 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I am just loving it. And it's also nice because annotating is kind of making me like slow down and think a little bit more and kind of like soak up things. So it's kind of been nice, but because of that, it's taking me a little bit longer to get through it. So hopefully I'll finish this in the next couple days. So moving on into the book haul that I had throughout of January. So the first one that I got was Rosie's Traveling Tea Shop by Rebecca Raisin. This is a recommendation from Grace for the Love of Lit, and it's a contemporary, and it is a contemporary about a Michelin-starred chef who has these grand plans for her life of having children and everything like that, and then she finds out that her husband had an affair on her, and she drinks a glass of wine or 3 and ends up buying a camper van to go travel the country. So it is kind of, I guess, her story of coming to terms with her heartbreak and kind of setting a new trajectory for her life, but I am really excited to read this one. I typically don't read contemporary, so this is going to be a little bit of a new adventure for me, but I'm really excited about it. So I'm not gonna lie, I picked up this book because it straight up reminded me of Indiana Jones, but this is The Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. This book is about a girl named Theodora whose father is a treasure hunter, and she has always wanted to go with him. However, one day he doesn't come back. So armed with his journal, she goes on an adventure in an attempt to find him. She visits Istanbul in Romania, and I just want to be in this book and I've never even read it, so I'm really excited. I have high hopes that it's going to be incredible. So one of my favorite reads of 2020 was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, so I'm attempting to kind of ease back into the murder mystery genre, and so I've heard really great things about this one. But this is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and it is about a girl named Stevie Bell who is a true crime aficionado, and she goes to this private school in Vermont. And many years ago, there was a murder and this mystery surrounding it from someone named Truly Devious, and while she is there, she attempts to solve that crime, and instead Truly Devious comes back and starts wreaking havoc again. And so it is all about her trying to figure out the mystery, who it is, and so anyway, I'm kind of excited about it. Okay, this next one, I have no idea what it's about. It is Hush by Dylan Barrow. I have seen it occasionally on Bookstagram. I've heard a few people talk about it. I think it is about this plague that is spread through ink, but that is truly about all I know. I just thought it was really pretty, and the vagueness of it kind of grabbed me, and so I'm excited to start this one. So if you've read it, drop a comment below and let me know if it's good or not. So with this next one, my no chill gene kind of came out a little too strongly. I love Jay Kristoff. I've read the Illuminate series, I've read the Aurora Cycle. I love it. I think he is so witty and funny. And so I may have just went ahead and like bought all 3 of the Nevernight Chronicles, which is the expectation that I'm gonna love it. So I'm excited. It is about a girl who is trying to become an assassin. She goes to assassin school. That's all. I mean, honestly, all I needed to know was that it had Jay Kristoff's name written on it. So like, I pressed buy so fast. So anyway, I'm excited about these. I've heard incredible things. I also know that Jay Kristoff is coming out with a new book, The Empire of the Vampire, this year. I think it's sometime like later in the year. And I'm so excited. So I'm going to devour these in the meantime while I'm waiting for that one. So here's to Nevernight. This book has been catching my eye whenever I've gone into bookstores for quite a while now. I know that this book has also been around for like 25 years. So this is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. It's actually the illustrated edition. So I was like, yes, absolutely. Distract me with all the pretty pictures. But I hear it's kind of like a classics in like fantasy and things like that. So I'm excited about this one. Again, I don't know a whole lot about it, but when I checked on Goodreads, it had amazing reviews. So the last one that I got is The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi, and I am so excited. I have heard a lot of people kind of compare this to the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I love a good heist. I love a good, you know, kind of ragtag group of people, and so it's also set in Paris in 1889, so I was just like, yes, please give me more. So that is it for this video. In the month of February, I'm actually moving from Texas to Tennessee, so I'm not really quite sure how many books I'm going to be able to read, but I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy reading.